In this episode, I have an amazing conversation with my good friend, Annie Gustafson, who has been my friend for probably close to 10 years now. We've gone through many evolutions in our friendship together, and I am so honored and excited to have her on as my first guest on this new series that I'm going to be doing, where we just explore our charts together and just talk about what your experiences are with having the design that we have, and using it as a chance to kind of experiment and see how we experience things. So it's mostly just a casual conversation, but with some human design sprinkled in. And I do want to just apologize in advance, because after reviewing the video, I realized that my Zoom recording settings were not quite perfect, and we don't actually have our faces on video for the majority of the interview, unfortunately. But we still have the screen recording, so you can see what I'm talking about in her chart. I hope that doesn't affect your enjoyment of the interview. And without further ado, let's get into it. So, welcome to my first ever guest episode. I am super, super excited to have my good friend Annie Gustafson here with me to talk about human design. And in this is just the first of a new series, and we're going to be exploring our definition and our design, and looking at how the different centers that we have defined in our charts might be impacting our life and how we experience things. So my friend Annie is a very accomplished cyclist. She is also an incredible communicator, journalist, and author. And yeah, Annie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Kat. And I mean, I heard you call yourself an amateur, but I know you are deeply wise on these topics. I'm honored you want to spend time with me and share your wisdom, and really enjoyed being in your astrology class last fall. So
Cool.
more
Awesome.
please, more please.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for volunteering and offering yourself up to be my first guinea pig. I'm gonna hop over and, oh, actually, I'm gonna have to allow some permissions before. Um, there we go. Okay,
There I am.
there you are. So I had looked at your design before, but it's almost like I'm looking at it with new eyes now, because I've been on this journey of like learning this new kind of stripped back, really fundamentals version of human design, without all of the dogma that's been piled onto it. And so, um, I mean, this is you. It really is.
I was waiting for you to say something like that. Like, this all makes sense
Yeah,
to me.
yeah.
I love it.
So yeah, so the first thing that jumps out at me about your chart is that, so when we're talking about design and definition, we're looking at, so the basics is that if there's a planet and a gate on each side of a channel, those two centers are connected, and so they're defined. And so you have an island of definition up here with your head and your ajna center, and then you have another island of definition down here. So you have split definition, but it's not just any split definition, it's a very wide split. So you need actually a whole center and a couple gates to bridge that split.
Hmm.
So what the School of Human Design, that I'm studying, split definition, people are always going to be looking for something outside of themselves to kind of bridge that gap. And with a wide split, it's even more pronounced, and I'm just curious how that resonates with you, and what does that bring
Uh,
up for you?
So much, actually. I mean, I feel like my life journey has absolutely been different ways of, you use the phrase searching for things outside myself. I've been so hungry for external validation. And there, I can mention just a few life events in terms of going to grad school and going for a PhD, only ended up with an MA. That's just the short story.
We have that in common, except you
Yeah.
got the consolation prize. I didn't even.
Yeah, just wanting those letters behind my name and really believing in my 20s that that was my value.
Hmm.
My father was an entrepreneur with his own company, so too, I think this outward looking kind of like, I'm gonna create this thing, and I've inherited parts of his worldview, and I also question a number of them, but this idea almost that your net worth is your worth. Like that's my
Hmm.
dad's old school um, view of the world. And then later, working in a couple Fortune 100 companies and believing a lot of my worth was in my title, my paycheck. Later, being an amateur competitive cyclist and really loving standing on the podium. Like this felt really good. And so I think looking for things outside myself, I've had a lot of relationships where I've looked for that validation and kind of, I'm not sure who I am, so I'm going to reflect some things to you, and then you reflect back to me, and then I'll figure it out. It's almost, I'm not saying I endorse it, but I think that's been the journey. And I feel like I'm shedding some of that to get to more of an authenticity, a true kind of more dropped in, slightly slower pace on a good day. Um, Annie that is clear on her values. At times that's gotten fuzzy and wavy, and I kind of bump into other things to know where I am instead of just knowing where I am in a peaceful, clear way. So I'll kind of
Yeah.
stop for a breath there, but needless to say, like that theme has been a huge one for me and is really a lot of the storytelling I'm doing is essentially kind of the search for myself. I mean, it's so cliche and so true.
Right. Well, and I mean, I also resonate with that really strongly. I don't have the split definition, but I do have that lifelong feeling of like, who am I? Like, what do I like?
And
Like,
I tried on. I mean, I did have a therapist share with me, and I thought it was really funny. This was about 6 years ago. He's like, it's like you went to the identity store and tried a bunch of things on. Oh, I guess I like costume changes. Here I
yeah.
am, 45 years old, and yeah, I've had the opportunity to do a few. And then I've also kept a fair amount of freedom. I've never been married
Hmm.
and kids. So there's certain parts of identity I've also wanted to just have infinite possibility, it seems. And that
Hmm.
has advantages and disadvantages.
For sure. Yeah. And the interesting thing about this split is that, and I think this is true of every wide split that spans a center, because I was trying to like mentally calculate it, but I think anytime you have a wide split that includes a center, it's always going to be the throat center, because you
Mm,
have to have something that's way up high and then you have to have something that's way down low. And anything that's down here, all of these other centers connect almost all of them to each other. So it's interesting because the throat center is really what governs our expression, and our manifestation and our doing and our actions. And so it's really interesting to me to see you as, somebody I've known for a long time and I've always thought was a very, very fantastic communicator, to see that you have actually this wide open definition or lack of definition in your throat center. And it
yeah.
really speaks to I mean, in human design, it's people tend to, when they're new to the system, they tend to think, oh, defined is good and undefined is bad, right? But it's really not that at all, right? The defined is where it's constant and where we have access to it, but the undefined are the places where we have the most space and the places where we kind of can sample the most energies and like learn the most. But they're also the places where we get wounded, especially in childhood, and the places where we have to protect ourselves because we don't have that access to our own information.
Yeah. I mean, I think a big theme for me right now is feeling comfortable voicing my desires and what do I want? Because I'm used to kind of reading a room or other people I care about and then kind of couching what I want within what I perceive to be what they want, which doesn't
Mm.
usually end up working well. And so that's definitely something I'm practicing a lot is getting in touch with, okay, what do I want right now? How can I calm
Mhm.
state it, not in a commanding or demanding way, but just like, oh, actually, I'm hungry right now, and I would love for us to move towards dinner in the next 30 minutes or so. Just like simple things like that.
Totally.
It sounds so obvious, but I think I've struggled with that over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and have some people pleasing tendencies. Those are some wounds and kind of historic patterns that I thought maybe kept me safe, kept me lovable. And
Hmm.
as I have had the opportunity to sink into some really secure relationships, it's like, oh, that's not serving anyone. Duh.
Yes. Yes, so much. So I think the undefined heart center is actually really probably a characteristic of that, especially the people pleasing and the like putting my needs second to yours. The
Yep.
heart center in is it's so there's kind of two centers that are traditionally aligned with the heart chakra. So we have the G center in the center here, which is the sense of direction and the self in terms of like where am I going on a large scale? Like what's my mission in life? And then there's the heart center, which is more of like the who am I? What do I need? What does my body need? Like what do I need validation? Do I need security in like in a social sense? And people with undefined heart centers, a pattern, and I'm also in this camp, a pattern that I've seen is early on, you didn't have your needs met especially in an emotional way. And so you go out of your way to make sure other people's emotional needs are met before you do that same for you.
100%. And I have no problem sharing this, but there is some substance use disorder in my family. And so I think, and it was alcohol. So it was
Hmm.
a little bit of like uncertainty. What's the mood today? Did I cause
Mm.
it? I better calibrate for this. Like it was a lot of like reading and shifting myself, like a lot of
Hmm.
shape shifting and like an over responsibility that just I didn't have the tools as a kid to understand what was really going on. And so I took it personally.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, and the heart center is one of the most commonly undefined because there's only four gates in it, so there's only four potential ways for it to be defined. So it's really really common to have that, but yeah, it's one of the patterns that I've seen, and I have done lots of work in therapy myself about like, no, what do I want and what do I need,
It's like so obvious and so hard at the same time.
right?
Yeah.
Truly,
And it's,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I came to a point too regarding like the substance stuff I mentioned a few minutes ago. I mean, I was like, okay, well, I can't have alcohol in my life because I don't want to repeat that pattern. So
Hmm.
5 years ago now. So like just things like that, like how can I be aware of that wound and then start to heal it instead of kind of adding to it.
Totally. Yeah. And that's the beauty of this work is that it's only by actually looking at and facing and coming to terms with our wounds that we can actually move forward and we can break the cycle, whether that's for the next generation or just in the universe, in the world. So,
Yeah. And I don't know if this
yeah.
is heart center related in particular, but kind of a sense of unworthiness or undeservedness is definitely like one of the
Hmm.
that has followed me around
Yep.
that I,
Yep.
again, opportunity to work with it and learn from it. But I think that, um, or this belief that I needed to earn love, that I wasn't worthy of
Hmm.
it as is, and that certain actions or accolades would get
Yeah.
me security that I so crave. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. 100%. Yeah, so the heart center can absolutely be associated with worthiness and with that feeling of having to earn love. Oh
Yeah. Yeah. Oof.
God. Another thing I've spent a lot of time in therapy about.
Oh, me
Yeah.
too.
The
Me too.
one of the other centers that you have undefined here is the root center, which is the same as the root chakra. So this is going to be our like our security and our sense of like rootedness in the 3D in the physical world. And the interesting thing about your root chakra is that it actually is completely open. So you don't have a single gate defined in the root. So
Lots of ways to go with that one, huh? Yeah. Fascinating.
yeah, so I mean there's one of the patterns, and again, I just want to take a step back. The School of Human Design that I study and that I ascribe to, we don't tell you like I'm never going to tell you what it means to have a center defined or undefined. We're just like we're taking notes and we're comparing, right? This is an experiment.
Sure.
We're trying to say like, oh, this seems to be a theme with this center undefined. But in my studies, one like the root center undefined, one of the things that consistently comes up is a question, like a deep uncertainty of like, am I really capable of taking care of myself? Do I
Mhm.
really have like the resources to survive? And I'm just curious if that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for my more creative journey of the past few years and really having this ambition of like, of course I will write a full length memoir. And then this deep uncertainty of like, who actually cares about my story? Like all things considered, I'm pretty privileged and lucky. And so this you mentioned kind of maybe a little bit of like disbelief in my capacity to do
Mm-hmm.
it. And I definitely am struggling with that. And kind of falling out of love with the project and like finding ways back into it. And then, of course, as I continue to change, the story keeps changing and kind of, but also wanting to finish the thing I said I'd do. So it's really, there's this like, I joke, there's kind of linear Annie that's like, do the thing. And then there's this like non-linear part of me that's like, and some of my friends have joked, they're like, maybe the most radical thing you could do is not finish it. And I'm like, oh. So that's kind of what comes up, I guess, around like a big project. And then the other theme that comes up is just like thinking about root chakra in relation to sexuality and
Mm-hmm.
sexuality. I've been on doing a lot of explorations the past couple years. I was in a 9-month mystery school. I went to ISTA for their level 1 program last August. So I think maybe some of the benefit of this undefined is that I get to be on a journey and try.
Mm-hmm.
And that has actually been really fun and really confidence building and like that has been a really rich experience that continues to kind of unfold for me in unexpected ways that are joyful and delightful.
Yeah, I love that. The open centers or the undefined centers are like I said at the beginning, it's a place where we have the most capacity to sample all of the energy around us. And that's an interesting because you are quite a, you're always getting up to new and interesting things like
Yep,
traveling
I'm always
here and
going
doing.
to like retreats or going to yeah, just kind of new forms of self-expression or even like going to ecstatic dance more over the last 8 months. And so just kind of letting movement guide me in a way that's very different from the bike racing. So,
Hmm.
and they're such different brains and both have their joys. So, but
Yeah.
going more towards this non-linear form of self-expression and and for bike racing, it was like I'm lifting to strengthen this muscle so I can go faster. But with dance, it's more like, well, I'm just putting my hand in there because it feels really good.
Right.
And like, I want to. But it's like, and it's radical for me. It's
Yeah,
radical. Like, just move because it feels good.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many different places we can go. So let's talk about the other undefined center that you have in your chart. And so this one over here, and I'm assuming you can see my mouse on my screen share,
Okay.
can you? Okay,
And
cool.
thank you.
I'm always a little unsure about that. Yeah, so
Mhm.
this one is the splenic center. So it's associated with the spleen. And in mainstream human design, it kind of gets couched as the intuition center, but it's really more about it's an awareness center, and it's about our sense of feeling good or bad in our body and our ability to know that our body can keep us healthy. So I'm curious if you've had any like health struggles that you'd want to share about, or if you have if that brings up anything that.
mean, I've actually had a number of small yet consistent and persistent health things this year in
Mhm.
2025. So I mean, part of that has been like, wow, I have such gratitude for kind of this high level of function I've been able to enjoy prior to some of these issues. And some of them are happening in like the pelvis region and in that like the root chakra areas. And so I have no idea if
Mhm.
that's related to some of this, but and just, I'm 45 and I'm female, so there might be some hormonal shifts going on with this and really being like, oh, I can't go at the pace I'm used to. And that
Mhm.
is such a big part of how I see myself that scares me. It terrifies me sometimes because I'm used to
Yeah,
faster and more is better. And I'm
right.
now being invited into, because my body just can't sustain that. And I'm being invited into this new phase of like, how can I be a little kinder, a little gentler? And something that's been coming up for me a lot lately, instead of using strive and drive energy to like push myself and crack that whip and go, go, go,
Mhm.
fifth gear, full throttle, I'm like, what is compassionate motivation? And wow, I really suck at it.
Oh no.
Like I'm really confused how like that kind of voice that is, we'll say it's, I was having a chat with AI last week as
Hmm.
one. And I was asking about kind of other ways to motivate that aren't strive and drive at fear-based energy. And its recommendation was to ask myself the question, like, is the voice I'm hearing in my head right now based out of love or is it fear talking? And I'm very used to that fear voice as a motivator. And I'm really curious
Hmm.
how I would feel if I started to be a little nicer or kind of, I know Elizabeth Gilbert shares on her blog and various podcasts where she's been a guest. She does these letters from love. So she does this
Hmm.
open prompt that says, what will love have me know today? And it's like, how can I step a little bit more into that instead of like, you need to be productive, girlfriend. Go get it now. Go. Like they're two
Yeah.
very different voices. Or like you suck or you're lazy. I mean, I can get really mean with myself, but how can I be like, do the thing that is alive in your heart or get this done out of the molten lava of your pure desire. Like I would love to tap into that. And it feels very foreign.
Yeah,
Only used to
totally.
that like carrot and stick approach.
Yeah, that really seems like your undefined root center to me
Okay.
is that
Okay.
like pressure to get things done and to achieve and to strive and to like produce like the root center is also just like it's pushing up, right? It's coming from the ground and it's pushing up. So um what's coming out of you, I think, is like
Mm.
the root center, right? Because it is associated with sexuality, it's associated with our elimination, it's associated with childbirth, it's associated with sex, right? All of those things that are the bottom of the pelvis, the pelvic floor, right? um
Yep.
and with
Yeah.
being such a the way that I like to think of undefined or defined and undefined centers is that our centers are all radios, right? And the
Mhm.
defined centers have presets that we can just push the button and you can just like plug right in. And the undefined centers have like an old school knob that you have to like and find the station.
I love that metaphor. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
So,
Yeah. Um, yeah, and the thing I've kind of found a few times too in a delightful way is that when I I I like to be surprised. So sometimes if I, for example, like now I'm in this really interesting polyamorous configuration and it's a relationship I never could have imagined, and yet it works. So it's actually not
mhm.
the thing I was striving for. It kind of evolved, has taken on different branches and limbs, and it's like, oh, how fascinating. Because the thing, if you'd asked me, like, this is what I want, it wasn't this thing, but here it is, and I like it and it works. What?
Yeah, I love that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about the polyamory, and this is like maybe like a pin to put in for a totally different podcast episode or even a series, because
Oh,
I'm fascinated by the way that people's charts lay together. So you can look and you can see this is yourself, but then you can imagine like if you took somebody else and you put it on top of this, you get a composite chart, right? And
yep.
it's a way of seeing like how do we connect each other, right? How do we activate each other? And I'm
Well,
really I like
and add a third
one
person.
yeah, right? That's one of the threads of like research that I kind of want to go down is like what are the common themes or what are the things that if for people who are in polyamorous relationships, like what does one partner give you that the other one doesn't and stuff like that, but
It's no, it's a really fascinating and I feel like I've
yeah.
lived a lot of that. And I would just say like the metaphor that we use sometimes is about how can we help each other spiral upwards. So kind of that
Mm,
growth orientation that what's good for you is good for me is good for the other person, like in this triad situation. And so and then sometimes it's we spiral downwards if one person didn't disclose what they actually wanted or one person's feelings are hurt. And so it's kind of this like there's a lot of movement and then it's also based on some spaciousness because the spiral needs to breathe.
mhm,
Talk about that too. If things get too
mm,
tight, spoiled, then we're not each gonna be doing our individual work and being solid in
Right.
our core self. And that there's this kind of belief then among the three of us that in order to have deep intimacy, you need to know yourself really well. It's not necessarily other person's responsibility, right? Or it's like you have to know thyself in order to go deep with others.
Right.
And so that's
Yeah.
been just like a really interesting, like, oh,
Yeah.
and a powerful metaphor, and one that can go, I mean, there's all kinds of different, I joke about like loop-de-loops and up down turnarounds and cosine and sine waves, like there's just but anyway, the golden mean and spirals, I mean there's just so many places in nature too. There is something.
Hmm.
Yeah.
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 So when you're talking about the direction that you're going in life, that makes me think of the G center, which is right in the middle. So this is kind of what we would think of as being the heart chakra, but it takes on a new meaning in human design. And according to the original revelation, there's some very mystical stuff about like there's a personality crystal and a design crystal, and they come together, and then there's a magnetic monopole that lives in the. It's all kind of hard to understand, to be totally honest. But the magnetic monopole, according to the lore, lives in the G center. And this is a magnet that only attracts and it can never repel. And
Fascinating.
as my mentor describes it, it's a magnet that yanks you from birth to death.
It knows where it's pulling you, even if I don't know, maybe sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And you do have G center definition. It's defined to the sacral center through the center channel of the 214, which I don't think we'll have time to get into the specifics of the gates, but um the sacral center is exactly the same as the sacral chakra. This is our creativity, it's our juicy, like it's the womb, right? It's our um it's the like the sexual motor that kind of drives our eros, right? Our erotic energy. And having it connected to the G center, I think is really I think it shows up really beautifully for you because you do have this like just eros about you, like this just like juicy like lust for life, and you just like live in this like just very sexy way
Well,
from my
thank you so much.
perspective.
I mean, it's I kind of laugh because it's not hard for me to be like naked in front of other people or in a temple situation, but if you want to talk to me about like finances or my bank account, like that's where it's like, oh God, that's so personal. I don't want to talk about it. But being the other stuff doesn't freak me out. So I do kind of think it's funny. And my dad used to joke, he's like, oh, it's harder to talk about money than sex. So anyway, yeah, I mean, one of my Tantra teachers, Jared, says, cut off your head. Like, how can you follow desire more than your cerebral kind of, well, here's the type of person I think I'm attracted to, or some of the things
Hmm.
as I've had fun doing where you're blindfolded. And so you're listening to just the magnetism within you instead of, oh, I really like people with blue eyes. So it just opens things up in a really interesting way because you are, I think, listening to the um that inner magnet, to use your word, instead
Hmm.
of tripped up over what I think I want and being in my head about it. So it's kind of funny. I used to think my head was all of me. And it's like almost this phase of life I'm in now. I'm like, I used to really envision myself almost as this, like a lollipop on a stick. Like I'm a head,
Hmm.
I have a body that comes with me. Gosh darn it, I have to take care of it. It needs sleep and food and water. And now I'm like, oh, there's so much intuition and wisdom in my body. And I've never really taken the time to like learn how to talk to it and be in conversation with it. So that
Yeah.
has been like fun to experiment with. And someone shared with me after a recent temple experience in a kind of gratitude exercise. They're like, Annie, you're really good at being childlike without being childish. And I was like, thank you.
Yeah.
That is a high
Yeah.
compliment. I have no
Yeah.
problem, like,
That's a beautiful compliment and also very true about you, I
yeah,
think. Yeah.
like the sacred sillies
Yeah.
are big for me.
I love
So
it. Yeah. Yeah, well, and one of the things I've been noodling a lot lately is so the word sacral
mm,
chakra, and the word sacred are the same root, right? And so I've been thinking about the sacral center as the holy of holies in the temple, right? That inner sanctum, the womb. And then I've also been, so mainstream human design puts labels on people with a defined sacral center. They say you have a defined sacral center, so you are a generator. So congratulations on being an appliance.
Right? Right.
Just plug me in and just pull the string, and
I just
I'll
go,
just go
yeah.
go go. Um, I'm not a big fan of those labels, in case you hadn't figured that out yet. But the one of the things that I've been kind of noodling on about having defined sacral, which I also do, is having this like capacity to incubate and this capacity to like um, be dedicated to the creation process in the dark and in the places that are hidden when nobody else is seeing it yet. And maybe that's just because I've kind of been in that phase for the last several months, but
Yeah, no,
I'm
being in
curious
the
how that
mystery.
resonates.
And I think that again, like using some of the tantra terms and energies I've been working with, like that dark feminine kind of. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm feel like I'm recovering in a number of ways from this light masculine, linear, task oriented. And I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a lot of like juice for me, especially in the creative realm, working more with dark feminine energy and not
Yeah.
and being okay with that and then just trusting whatever shows up. Like that letting go is definitely a growth edge for me. Um,
Yeah.
and then the other kind of thing that bubbled up for me is there's another kind of saying from tantra classes I've taken about like if it's not a fuck yes, it's a no.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I definitely that people pleaser part of me can
Mm-hmm.
tripped up and want to be like, well, I don't know, maybe, or like ask me again in an
Yeah.
hour. Or like part of me likes some of that, but it's like, no, it is very clear when it's like a, oh, yes, I
Yeah.
really want it. And so like feeling into what that feels like. And I find that sometimes too, I have a habit of giving my time away willy-nilly and just overpacking my schedule. And I love it. And I love having friends and people I adore in my life, but sometimes I don't save enough for me. And so I'm trying to kind of feel into more like what is going to be this kind of like mutual energy exchange on a high level, not just kind of a download of like,
Mm-hmm.
how's work? What did you eat for dinner? When's your next vacation? What house project are you
Right.
doing? Like checking those boxes. Like I'm finding I have less and less space for those. They have their place in the world, certainly,
Totally.
but it's kind of not what is like really lighting me up and making me feel the most alive. And more that fuck yes, like I just am so enamored with this, or you know, uh,
Yeah.
let's talk about this
Yes.
idea concept. Like
Yeah.
that's where I want to be just being more intentional about having that in my
Totally. Yeah. My partner is always like getting on my case when I'm like, oh, I don't know. And he's like, don't say you don't know, just say no. And I'm just like, but I don't know.
and get confusing in there. There's like
Yeah.
17 different things between yes and no for me. And
Yeah.
I get tripped up in it. And then it's like, okay, zoom out a little bit. Like I just spent 4 days on an island where cars aren't allowed. And it was a good exercise of being like, what do I really need in my life right now? And what are a few things I need to cut out, which is kind of my
Mm,
to do, to just have a little bit more ease. So I'm not being like frantic and frenetic and pushing myself a little too hard. And then running into those health problems we talked about a little bit earlier, where it's just like
yeah.
energetically feeling spent and like I'm not doing things to resource and the vitality, life force energy, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that you said earlier, though, really stuck with me, and I wanted to come back to it because I didn't I was like need to talk about that. You mentioned cutting off your head. Your tantra
Mhm.
teacher mentioned was saying just like cut off your head and listen to your body. That is one of the coolest things to me about human design is like we look at the mental centers, so that the head and the ajna center here, they can't connect to anything else in the body unless they go through the throat.
Interesting.
So all of this wisdom, all of this knowledge, all of this flow of energy has to get processed through through either through speech or through expression, through dance, through movement, before it can get like in between the head and the body, right? So
I mean,
there's
it's a
so much.
narrow even just physiologically, the way we are
Yeah.
put together, it is this
Right.
narrow little highway. And it's like, oh man,
Yeah.
it's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I used to really have some confusion until maybe about 5 years ago. And people were like, oh, I'm going to listen to my body. I'd be like, oh, yeah, yeah, I'm going to do that too.
Right.
And kind of,
What does that mean?
right. Like, and it was such usually advice given to me by like my mother when I had strep throat, or something
Uh-huh.
like, yeah, I have to listen to my body right now. I have no choice. But it took me a while to really get, like learn what that feels like and
Yeah.
how to slow down to listen. And I'm still working on it. But it is like, I think some people have a more developed dialogue and are more fluent with their body. I'm still like learning mine in a number of ways. Like,
Undefined spleen things, right? Yeah, that having that connection to somebody described the spleen as being like a like James Bond and like having that knowledge of just like, oh, there's somebody right there, like that kind of like
I
um
say there's the bad guys just around the corner. Like,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be about the bad guys. It can be about the bad guys on the inside or
I see.
the like the immune system is also like physiologically governed by the spleen, but there's this like ability to listen to the signals of the body, I think, come a bit more naturally to people with defined spleens. So
Yeah,
you're not behind.
I'm working on that. Yep. And it is been, I
You know,
mean, it's a fun process and but it's just, yeah, I think I definitely grew up in a household where really the emotions that were most allowed, what was this being positive. And so if I wasn't in an agreeable state, I was sent to my room. So I really
mm,
didn't have like tools to even process it either. And kind of,
yeah,
yeah, like not having some of the access to the tools we have now about do some box breathing, do some
right,
emotional piece, go on a nature walk, meditate. I mean, some of those still don't always feel accessible when I'm really in it, but I
right,
know at least now. So
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so like I like to think of it as like your chart is, you're about to enter the game, and like if I'm not a big RPG player, but I have played a couple, and so like when you're putting your character together before you start a role-playing game, right? You pick a little bit of this, and you only have a certain amount of resources that you can put towards wisdom or stamina or agility or whatever.
or the fairy wings
And
that you want, or whatever it is. Yeah.
right, exactly. And so, in human design, we get 13 placements for our conscious and 13 placements for our unconscious chart. And so it's kind of like putting together your RPG character. And so
Mm,
this was the configuration that you chose for this lifetime to give you the growth that you need. But one of
mhm,
the tools that you did come in with that I think, based on the description of, your experience growing up in this, somewhat emotionally volatile household where you weren't allowed to express those emotions, but they were definitely there, you did come in with a defined solar plexus. So this is the emotional center. So this is where we kind of tune into the ways other people are feeling and to the way that we're feeling emotionally. And it's you got the radio with the presets and you're able to pick things up really, really easily in this area. So I'm curious, are you like you probably able to kind of feel or like just tell who's having a bad day, who's having a good day just by walking in the room?
yes, I do feel like I mean, in a positive way too, especially with some of the partners I have in my life now, they're like, you really do show a lot of care. And
Mm-hmm.
like, how did you remember that thing? Or you paid attention to that detail. And it's like, oh, I didn't know that everyone doesn't absorb information at that level. And so it kind of surprises me because for me, it's just how I roll. It's how I exist, right? I don't really put extra thought and effort into it. And I think the challenge too is to not take too much responsibility. Like I mentioned earlier as a kid. So if someone
Mm-hmm.
is in a bad mood, my defensive kind of mechanism that I developed way back when was like, oh, I must have caused this. So what can I do to make it?
Mm-hmm.
So it's I think for me right now, the work is discerning between kind of, I'm sensing this. How can I gently maybe check in with this person in a really like supportive way that leads with curiosity? Is it making a
Mm-hmm.
sense? And then if they want to talk about it, I'm available. And if they don't, I'm like, okay, that's fine too.
I love that. Yeah,
Kind
that's
of,
such a
yeah.
healthy way to process that.
But I know certainly on like certain work teams, it's like if there's a mood, like I definitely pick up on it. And I have to
Hmm.
sometimes maybe have that good way to unplug from group energy. I think that's like
Hmm.
something I could step up in terms of a personal practice because if it's low vibes, like I'm feeling it too, and I'm carrying it around and I'm probably amplifying it and maybe
Hmm.
even unconsciously. So it's something that I wanna or I'll try and mitigate that with a lot of enthusiasm, and then sometimes people will read that as fake.
Right.
And so I've like run into that too, where maybe people who don't know me very well kind of think I'm um performing in a way. And it's like, no, I'm just actually that excitable all the time.
That's just Annie.
Like, I don't want to be annoying and I'd love to work with you on like times that you are ready for that and times I can bring it down a notch. Like, let's have a conversation. You know? But like I've gotten kind of misread in that way too.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's so one of the things that one of the things about our defined centers is that, so like I mentioned earlier, our undefined centers are the places that we're a bit more vulnerable to other people kind of overriding us, and we kind of get these defense mechanisms. But the reverse is true about our defined centers, right? Those are also the radio antenna that are broadcasting to the signals to the other people, who might feel, probably unconsciously, they can get kind of overridden by our defined centers. So having
Mhm.
that like emotional radio tower that you're picking up everything around everybody around you, you're also broadcasting it back out. And so I think that's it's the solar plexus is interesting because it's definitely the newest center, and it's also, to me, the most poorly understood. At least it's one of the ones that I don't understand as well. Um, it's it's also an awareness center, which, or like a cognition center, and I think it's where our new, the psychic senses that are coming online for people now, I think is are based in the solar plexus, because the gut has more neurons than our brain, right?
I've
So
heard that fun fact. And I mean, I
yeah.
love food and I care deeply about eating well. Sometimes I wonder if that's a little overkill, but that makes like sense to me. I'm just really into I pretty much always have like my next meal on my mind in some way. Not in like an
Mm,
obsessive, I don't think way, but like I travel with snacks. I just like to take care of myself in that way. I like to give and receive food as its own love language. Like people who I'm in relationship with know I love to feed
oh,
them.
you do.
And I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah, like it's just my thing. So,
Yeah.
and then I don't know if like something I found too more in, I guess this came up recently more in the romantic realm, but sometimes I also have a hard time like forgiving myself or letting go. I'm more apt to give that benefit of the doubt to other people, and I have different standards for me, which is,
Hmm.
and I have sometimes a hard time kind of like fully forgiving and moving on
Hmm.
myself. It's easier to give to other people, but for me.
Yeah. I wonder that forgiveness almost seems like it's maybe like a more of a mental
Maybe
process.
more. Okay. Yeah.
Does it? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So and yeah, so we haven't talked about your mental definition. So you have the head center defined to the ajna, and so the head center is our inspiration, connection to source. The energy coming down from the galaxy into our body. The ajna center is really the place where we make sense of that, and where we conceptualize and put things into pictures and words, and into a form that can then be expressed, right? Because energy has to come through the ajna from the head into the throat. It's
Yeah.
interesting. This is actually the least commonly defined center because there's only three gates in it.
Mm.
And I was comparing charts of all the people that I'm closest to in my life, and it's a lot of people are mentally defined in my life. And I am not. So,
I would guess that you are because I see you as a
yep,
highly intelligent and cerebral human. And I know not saying those are you can't
right.
not have the defined center and still have those qualities. But if I
Yeah.
was
Well,
yeah, I would have been like, oh, because you absorb information that to me is so complex with such ease, and you can digest
mhm.
it and then share it with people like me who are not experts. Like that to me is a huge gift.
Yeah, and I think that actually might be a like a conditioning reaction from growing up with a mentally defined mother.
trying to make sense of the world, like literally and
Yeah,
figuratively, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Not saying that it's a bad thing. Of course, I have leaned on my, my intellectual capabilities for, for years to make a
Oh,
living
they
and things
serve
like
you in
that.
so
But
many ways, right? Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
and I mean, but it's also like our open centers are the places where we have the most access to all of the information, right? The defined centers are where we have access to our information. The open centers or the undefined centers is more like there's things just come through. So
yeah,
yeah,
it's it's fascinating.
it
Hmm.
is. Yeah. And actually, I'm gonna turn on the transits right now. So this what we've got over here is now this is like what's going on in the out there right
Okay.
now. So where the planets are. And it looks like right now you are fully defined in a single definition. So you have every single center is defined and it's all connected for you right now.
So what I hear you saying, Kat, is this is as good as it's gonna get.
No, it's constantly changing.
Getting
It's
turned
probably a
on.
good time for you, I think.
Okay. Okay. I like it. No, I do feel like I'm still in that process of becoming and
Hmm.
settling into more my authentic self and shedding some of those layers of people pleasing, inauthenticity, um, and yeah, some of the themes that we've discussed for sure.
Yeah. So I'm just getting a little more granular. It looks like so right now it's the moon is in gate 37, which connects your solar plexus to the heart. And I can see in your chart,
Hmm.
just based on what you've talked about, your experiences growing up and feeling like other people's emotions were your fault and that you had to kind of overreact in order to manage, to kind of like manage that externally. Um, that connection is something that you are, the throat that would bridge your gap, right? That's kind of like the biggest thing. But like it looks to me like this, and this channel is actually the channel of community. So it's what bridges our emotional awareness with our self and our identity. So
Mhm.
that's a fleeting thing right now. It's just the moon, but that's I would be willing to bet that at least one of your partners has that gate defined.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like I'm going through some big like transitions around community and how I want to live. I think
Yes.
in
And
our
you're
capital,
leading. You're leading in
yeah.
that way.
What was the word you used again?
You're leading. I
Oh,
mean, at least
leading.
from my
Oh,
perspective.
thank you. I
Yeah.
don't. I mean, I'm experimenting. I'm trying some new things, but yeah. I mean, I think with my again business owning father and just our capitalistic culture, it's this you go buy a house, you have all your own stuff, you live in this, kind of more suburban cookie cutter. And then some of the people in my life are like, no, we're going to try this radical experiment called in living in intentional community. We're going to share
Hmm.
resources and cars and cook together and laundry and do mixed personal relationships with business. And so they're like all the things that I thought were neatly categorized. If you'd asked me 20 years ago, it's like they're getting merged in some ex unexpected, beautiful, growth-oriented, sometimes challenging ways. And yet there's a lot of joy. I mean, again, as someone who legally is a household of one, it
Right.
is kind of like, yeah, do I need to like have all this stuff? How can I turn my house into a place where I could host workshops, where you could teach a class like this? Those are questions I'm asking right now, and slowly in the process of getting rid of stuff so I can have more people in my house rather than, I mean, it
And
really
isn't
sometimes
that,
feels like that
yeah.
basic vision.
Yeah. It's so interesting the way that we think that that's the way that we should live. And so we go and we acquire the house and we get the things and we get all the trappings. And then we look around and we're just like, what is all this stuff?
A lot to manage. And it's some of it's hard. It's like, these are my deceased grandmother's dishes. Like
Hmm.
I want to honor her. But I forget
Hmm.
that I have them and I never get them out when I have dinner parties. So like what
Right.
you are they really serving me when yeah, I want to have the more kind of heart-oriented experiences, not just like lots of fancy dishes.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, I'm grateful that my brother and sister-in-law said they'd take some of those dishes because I was like, I don't know what to do here. And that's fine. And it's just like, okay, but it's that constant kind of check-in. And then I have a list of reasons downstairs of like why I'm decluttering. And it is to kind of create space for more connection, deeper intimacy.
Hmm.
But it is
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's like manifestation 101 is that you have to let go of what you don't want in order to call in what you do want. It's
exactly
a lesson
create
I'm
space.
constantly learning.
Oh my gosh, it's hard. I just think I can just have both, and it doesn't work that way.
Right? No, it doesn't work that way. You gotta, as one of my teachers puts it, you gotta get rid of the old couch before the universe can deliver your new couch. Because you're not gonna put a couch on top of that old couch.
So true. Or even just like with writing, there's often the metaphor of the compost pile. It's like, okay,
Mm,
put that in the compost pile and you didn't use those pages, that sentence, whatever, but it helped you get to the next one. That's the
hmm.
fertilizer for what the other seeds you're planting and ideas you're growing. And so yeah, it's definitely a constant process. And yet I like that it surprises me. It'd
Yeah.
be super predictable.
Oh, it would be so boring.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So that
Well,
is
Annie, this has been such an honor to have you be my first guest on this series. And this has been so much fun to get to, like, I've learned some new things about you and heard
oh,
some stories that that I haven't heard from about you before. So it's been such a privilege
oh,
to get to talk to you. I always
I'm
enjoy our hangs.
I'm deeply grateful. I'm so glad that we've remained friends over some of our different iterations and different
Hmm.
hobbies that have been having over
Right?
time. So I just love that we've been able to see each other through such change and we celebrate that
Yeah,
and can be sisters and friends throughout it. So thank you. It's been so fun and
absolutely.
really value our closeness. Thank you.
Me too. Um, where can people find you if you do you have anything you want to share?
Sure. I mean, I'm cooking up some things. Some of my work right now is to share a little more. I've gotten feedback from people close to me. I think I do have that perfectionist, like it's so
Hmm.
tight, I want it to be perfect. So I need to give it a little air and sunlight.
Yes.
So I'm gonna be probably creating something on the interwebs around Go Annie Gus. And then in the
Nice.
meantime, I think I will be starting to get back into the practice of some Instagram stuff. I'm just at Annie.Gustafson. I took a break from it for a while, and I think I'm ready to be more intentional and mindful, and also have just a sense of humor about what it is and what it isn't. But when I first started writing, which was now about 6 years ago, I was like, that's a distraction. No, I will
Hmm.
spend dumb hours on it. But now it's like, oh, it could be a way to like get some like kind of proofing ideas or like seeing
Yeah.
what spaghetti noodles stick to the wall. What are people interested and engaged in? So I hope to be sharing more and even just sharing little articles about some of the really cool work that is going on in Seattle. And there are a lot of people who want to do this heart-centered opening and want to connect in
Yes.
different ways that I think is really exciting. And I feel called to be here now. I was about ready to run away to California, uh, but
I'm
that
so
has
glad you stayed.
shifted for me dramatically in the last year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's all meant to be. So thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this interview, and this is just the first of many to come. If you have any questions, please pop them in the question box below. I'd love to see some thumbs up if you like this video. And if you are looking for more information about human design or what I'm up to, you can check out the links in the description below. You can pick up my book, sign up to beta test my course, and just get on my list and see what's coming up. So thank you so much.